Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Happy Tuesday. We've got a lot to talk about today. A ton is going on in the world of weather right now, so I've got my water bottle. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes, but just with the nature of how much is going on right now, I can't guarantee anything. So the plan for today's video is to talk about this massive historic winter storm that is about to get going here in the Midwest and Northeast. We're also going to talk about this heat wave ongoing in the Southeast, and then there's also severe weather to talk about now, as well as severe weather looking more likely going into this weekend and next week. So a ton is going on right now. Again, I'm going to try to fit this all into 15 minutes, so this might be a little quick paced. Like I said, that's why I got the water, so I'm sure my voice is probably going to be done by the time we get through this. But if you do like the video, make sure to hit the like button. And if you haven't already subscribed, I'd love for you to do so and join us here on the channel. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get right into it because, again, I don't want to take up too much of anybody's time, including my own, because I am obviously a very busy person just like all of you. So looking at radar right now, this is that northern component of this system. This is what's going to help really make this such a historic storm, is we're going to have really two pieces of energy here. First, this northern trough digging down, supplying that cold air, and then a southern low pressure system that's going to kind of work in tandem with this and just allow precipitation to override the Midwest here with wintry precipitation for such a long period of time. So taking a look at satellite here, it makes it even easier to see. This is that trough digging in down out of Canada, and this is that low pressure system down here over Texas. As this pushes up north, that is going to, one, help cause severe weather, two, like I said, combine with this trough and kind of ride that trough, and that is really going to allow an abundance of moisture here over the Midwest and cause some really kind of crazy snow and ice totals out of this. So taking a look at those hazards out there right now, we've got quite the colorful map to look at. So this kind of pinkish color here that you'd see kind of overspreading the entire west and the northern plains, that is winter storm warnings. So that's where we're going to see a lot of winter weather. And then kind of these, I'm not really sure what color it is, maybe orange-ish, kind of red orangish colors here, and I'll draw that in a different color so you can see it a little bit better, but that kind of color there, that is blizzard warning. So that indicates we have the chance of a lot of wind with this snow. So you're going to have blowing snow, just impossible travel conditions. And that's going to be pretty widespread here, I think, through southern Minnesota and even into the Minneapolis area, and then back into sections of North and South Dakota as well. So there's already the first sip of water. We're not even probably 5 minutes into this, but we also have winter storm watches up here for sections of New England because it's going to be such a system that really just impacts so many people. We already have those watches up here into New England and into just about all of Michigan, really, other than the upper peninsula of Michigan. So a lot of places going to be impacted with this system, and it's going to be long-lasting and a lot of different kind of impacts as well. So with all that said, let's go ahead and give you a quick overview of this thing, and then we'll break it down a little more in-depth region by region. So looking at the national view here, going into tonight and especially into tomorrow is when things really get ramping up here. So that's when this kind of lower piece of energy I've been talking about is going to begin to drive northward. And with that, we're going to likely get a line of severe weather here stretching from Texas up through the St. Louis metro area. And I'll show you that map here later on in the video. But also, that's whenever this low pressure and this kind of, I guess, precipitation is going to be able to override this cold air to the north, and that's when this thing is really going to get going into tomorrow afternoon. And there's going to be snow stretching from Wyoming all the way to New York. That's how expansive this is going to be. And now, obviously, there will be some places in between that see a lot less amount of snow at this given time, but nonetheless, with this first piece of energy and the second piece of energy, that is really going to help to stretch this thing out and bring that wintry precipitation through such a wide swath of the country. And you can see that really begin going into tomorrow evening. We're going to have winter weather stretching through the entire Midwest here and through the northern Great Plains, with snow for some places and ice for other places. And I'll break down who sees what here later on, but we're also going to have, again, this line of storms that we're going to worry about going into tomorrow evening before the stormy part of this system begins to kind of die down, but the wintry side just continues to get going even into Thursday. That's whenever it's really going to get rough here in a place like Minneapolis going into Wednesday night and Thursday. And again, this just continues into Thursday afternoon before finally we begin to really clear out for most of us going into Friday before a much nicer weekend in terms of at least this crazy weather. We will have some showers to worry about in the southeast, I think, but not anything like we're going to be dealing with for the next couple of days. So breaking this down region by region, we'll start here in the Midwest, and this is where I expect the worst impacts really out of this system. So we'll go ahead and bring this ahead in time. We'll likely get some snow here this afternoon to move through a place like Minneapolis. And this is really just going to be an appetizer for what's to come for sections of Minnesota there. And then this continues to work eastbound, and you get a nice swath of snow this evening from really the Dakotas back towards maybe upper Michigan. But this won't be anything crazy. Again, this is just kind of the appetizer before that moves out, and then tomorrow afternoon is when things really get serious. So this is when that heavier precipitation works its way in, and it looks like this snow ice line is going to set up right around the Iowa-Minnesota border, and then work kind of here into parts of Michigan. So a place like Minneapolis, I really think all snow with this. Back further south towards northern Iowa, here back towards the Chicago area, over towards Detroit. This is where it looks like it could really get icy with this storm. So that's where we expect the highest ice accumulations, and there will be sleet, so it'll likely go from snow to sleet to freezing rain. And where we see that freezing rain is where I expect the highest ice impacts. So just moving this ahead into time, you can see going into tomorrow afternoon, widespread winter weather from Minneapolis back towards Detroit, and then that's going to continue going into Wednesday evening. A place like Chicago, I'll tell you, it's a very tough forecast. It looks like rain right now for Chicago, but man, if these temperatures are just a couple degrees colder there, you're dealing with quite an ice storm. Same thing for Detroit, although I think Detroit's pretty well in the ice with this system. And then even back up here towards central Michigan, looks like a pretty good sleet storm ongoing, and then heavy snow to the north of that from Minneapolis back towards Green Bay, and then up here into the northern parts of Michigan. So moving this even further ahead into time, and again, I apologize if I take a sip of water. It's probably for the best. But anyway, going into Wednesday evening and into Thursday, look at this. This is just continuing. We're still getting snow falling in Minneapolis and into sections of northern Wisconsin, up into the UP of Michigan now, and that's just continuing into Thursday afternoon. So this is really going to kind of be a two-wave system. Just to bring this back and show that to you, first you're going to, I guess really a three-wave system the more I think about it. You're going to get this first wave tonight in a place like Minneapolis. Then that kind of southern low pressure is going to move through, and this will be wave 2 for most of us. And then we get wave 3 on the backside as that northern piece of energy moves through going into Thursday. So again, it's going to be really a long duration event from really starting now in a place like Minneapolis through Thursday afternoon. So with all this precipitation, how much snow are we talking about? In a place like Minneapolis, I'll tell you, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be between 1 and 2 feet of snow likely. So I think I'd say really 16 to 20 inches is probably a pretty safe bet in a place like Minneapolis, but I really wouldn't be surprised to see someone here in this region pass 2 feet of snow. I think somebody will do it here into kind of south central Minnesota and then back towards northern Wisconsin, with most of us, if not all of us, getting over a foot of snow and isolated spots getting close to 2 feet. Back towards northern Michigan, maybe a little less, and by little less, I mean, half a foot to a foot instead of a foot to 2 feet. So again, this is a lot of snow that we're going to be dealing with, and that's not the only part of this. Icing is the other issue. So here into southern Wisconsin, back towards the Detroit area, I think 1/10 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch is most likely, but areas getting past 1/4 of an inch up towards, I wouldn't even be surprised to see isolated spots seeing 1/2 an inch of ice, especially here into this section of Michigan here, north and west of Detroit. So now looking at New England, relatively quiet right now in New England. We have had some kind of storms and showers moving through. We even had a severe thunderstorm warning out towards Baltimore this afternoon, which was something I'm sure caught a lot of people off guard. But luckily, this kind of section of stormy weather will begin to finally exit the region going through tonight, and we get a bit of a lull starting tomorrow. But once we get into tomorrow afternoon, this precipitation moves in. And again, it looks like a real icy mess for a lot of us here into northern PA, into sections of New York here. And then luckily snow to the north of that. So I think up here into ski country, a lot of the places that have gotten so much snow out of these systems this year look to continue to cash in here into Vermont, New Hampshire, and up into Maine, and then ice south of there. So I think the worst of it here for New England will likely be going into Thursday morning as we get this bigger piece of energy to move through. And that's whenever I expect widespread heavy snow into much of Maine, northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and then kind of icy conditions here through the central part of Vermont, New Hampshire, and upstate New York. Looks like mainly ice for a place like Boston, mainly rain for a place like Boston, and then definitely rain further south towards New York City and Philadelphia before that kind of piece moves out, and then we get another bit of energy to move through going into Thursday night and Friday, which will really bring the same kind of conditions that the places have already seen. So snow into Maine and sections of northern Vermont and New Hampshire, and then ice in between with rain to the south. So how much snow in these regions? Well, it looks like definitely not nearly as much as back west, but I do think 6 to 12 inches is a pretty safe bet here through sections of northern Maine, as well as northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire here into ski country. And then mainly ice will be a bigger issue here into kind of this section through northern or upstate New York, rather, into southern Vermont and southern New Hampshire. So this is that ice map you can see here, with those totals being highest in those regions I just mentioned. Likely a tenth of an inch, I think, is going to be pretty widespread. So some places a little bit less, some places a little bit more, but I'd average that into about a tenth of an inch of ice through these areas. So another way to show this to you is the winter storm impact. So once you start getting into these orange colors, that's when things get pretty bad. Once you get into the red, that's major impacts, as you can see here. And this is straight from the National Weather Service. These are the words that they use. And you see even sprinkles here of this kind of purplish color getting in here towards Minneapolis. That is extreme impact. So that means travel's impossible, power outages very widespread, and that's when things begin to get kind of dangerous. So you definitely don't want to leave your home in those kind of conditions once you get into those extreme impacts. But major's already bad enough, and major's going to be widespread here through central Minnesota, northern Wisconsin, and through much of South Dakota with this storm system. And then even those moderate impacts look pretty widespread here into northern New England with sprinkles of major impacts, especially into those higher elevations. So that's not the only problem with this system. Like we talked about, we're going to have severe weather tomorrow, and that looks to set up shop here from, I'd say, St. Louis back towards the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area. So I think the biggest threat here will be winds, but can't rule out an isolated tornado and some hail as well with this kind of line of storms that works through this region. So showing that here with lightning flash density tomorrow afternoon, we'll see those thunderstorms, like I said, from St. Louis back towards OKC and Tulsa, and maybe even down towards the Dallas area, seeing some of those thunderstorms before that begins to finally kind of dissipate as the system moves further east, going into closer towards the weekend time frame. So that's not the only thing we're dealing with right now. We're also dealing with quite a heat wave going on here in the southeast, and I know it's February, so this is likely pretty surprising to a lot of people, but I'll show you just how hot it's going to get, and Thursday looks to be like the peak of this, and we're going to have some crazy temperatures here in the southeast on Thursday. I'll just tell you, I wouldn't be surprised to see somebody get really close to 90, and for February, that's just kind of insane. So showing this to you here, we'll move this ahead, and you can see this really just kind of crazy warmth really builds in Wednesday. So tomorrow, we're going to have really widespread warmth here in the southeast, but I think the peak of it really is going to be Thursday here. Look at Thursday afternoon. Places here in Ohio, 30 degrees above what you should be this time of year, and then widespread 20 to 30 degrees above what we should be throughout much of the southeast going into Thursday, before finally we get into Friday, and that looks to definitely calm down pretty substantially before going into this weekend, and most of us are kind of back to normal or even below normal here, I think, into sections of the Carolinas and Northeast, as we're going to be dealing with some of that colder air moving in and some cold air damming here into the Carolinas and Virginia on Saturday before getting into this weekend and the start of next week, and we have another big warm-up that will likely lead to some severe weather once again through this part of the country. So taking a look at those Thursday temperatures, this is the one I really wanted to show you. These are the National Weather Service forecasts. So this is what the National Weather Service is forecasting. And again, I wouldn't be surprised to see some of these temperatures get over this. But this is really widespread, record-breaking heat into the southeast, into the Carolinas, Mississippi, Alabama. Forecast of 84 in Raleigh, 82 in Charlotte, 85 in Birmingham, 86 down here into Jackson, Mississippi. And again, I think somewhere in this general area here, likely touches 90, or at least gets up towards 88. Definitely would not surprise me at all, and that's easily going to break some records. But even back up here into the Midwest, up into the 70s into Ohio and Pennsylvania for February is definitely, it's going to be short weather out there. You're going to be wearing shorts and a t-shirt, I can promise you that. So looking further ahead past this kind of craziness that we're dealing with right now, going into next week, I'll bring this map ahead some. Going into this weekend, I do expect some rain and maybe even a little bit of ice here into the mid-Atlantic and southeast, but it won't be anything significant. Likely a quick hour or two of some sleet or maybe freezing rain here into sections of Virginia and maybe Maryland, but not really expecting anything crazy out of that. But definitely some rain and some showers on Saturday before getting into Sunday, and it looks a bit nicer, although still some showers scattered out across the south. Before going into Monday, we look to get another pretty potent system working its way here through the plains and even into the east. So I expect severe weather with this, and likely pretty widespread severe weather going into, especially I think Monday, but we'll have to watch the timing of this because the models have been kind of all over the place with timing. So if we can get peak daytime heating with this thing out here towards the plains, I would definitely expect severe weather, but we're definitely going to have to iron out the details on the timing. National Weather Service, or the Storm Prediction Center rather, I should say, already has a risk out here for 6 days out. So this is for Oklahoma City, back up towards pretty much all of Kansas, especially central Kansas here, and then even parts of the Rio Grande River. So, or the Red River. Actually, you know what? To be honest, I don't know what river this is. I might have messed that up. But whatever river this is here between Oklahoma and Texas. Sorry to everyone out there. I live in the Carolinas, so I don't know what I'm talking about. But whatever river this is, kind of back towards that area as well, potentially seeing some severe weather. So just to kind of summarize everything, we have a ton going on right now. We have a lot that we're dealing with, and it's going to continue to be active through the rest of February and likely even to start March. So make sure that you're staying tuned because, the next week or two, it's going to be a lot that we're going to be talking about, and we're going to continue to break this down for all of you. But with all that said, make sure you're staying safe, make sure you're staying prepared, and I will see you all tomorrow.